Hi there, wildlife lovers. Welcome to World of Wildlife, where we explore the incredible creatures and ecosystems that make up our planet. I'm Sarah. Today we have an exciting journey into the world of dinosaur birds, or cassowaries, as they're more commonly known. But before we dive in, please make sure you hit the like button, comment below with any questions or wildlife stories that you have, and don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. While you're at it, check out my social media channels for more wildlife facts, updates, and behind the scenes content. All right, let's get stuck in. Welcome everyone to World of Wildlife. We have this gathering every single month. Every single month on the 10th of every month, we change the time so that people from around the world can come at different times. And that means that our gathering changes a little bit. But every single month we have a speaker who tells us a little bit about their area of wildlife. The way that it's going to work is I'll give you a bit of an update on what I've been doing as the host. If he's here, then Dr. Wong Suti gives us an update from Borneo. But because we've got the time really early in Australia today, it's even earlier in Malaysia. So he won't be here today. He'll be working. But if you'd like to meet him, then please come to another one and we'll actually introduce you to him there. All right. So this one, I'm going to introduce you to Graham, who's up in my that way on my screen. I'll introduce you to Graham later, and we'll be talking a little bit about cassowaries and tropical animals today, because Graham is a world leading expert in cassowary conservation and all sorts of other things about cassowaries, I guess, looking after them. I'm also going to introduce you today to Sandra. Sandra is down that way for me. I feel like I'm in the Brady Bunch. Okay, so Sandra is an illustrator, award-winning illustrator, who is an illustrator for my next book. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well today. So I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. So can everyone give me a thumbs up if someone can see that? Got the screen. Awesome. So let's start with an update. So an update for me. If those of you who are new, thank you for being here. I really, really appreciate you being here. My name is Dr. Sarah Pye, and I got the doctor because I actually wrote my doctorate focused on how narratives can engage non-scientists in conservation. And that led to the publishing of all these books. They all tell the stories of Dr. Wong Suti, who is my co-host in this gathering each month. So I first wrote his biography, Saving Sun Bears, as part of my doctorate output. And then I've written 7 kids' books about his adventures in the jungles of Malaysia with different species. Okay, so if you haven't seen those books yet, then have a look. I know that a lot of the people here have. Milani, you've got copies. I know that Taylor, Irene's daughter, has copies. And Taylor was actually one of the young reviewers in one of my books. So she's actually got her name, picture, and her review inside the cover of one of those books, which is pretty cool, I reckon. A couple of things I've been doing. I've just launched my new tours for Borneo next year. So this year I took a group of 6 adventure travelers to Borneo and showed them through this part of the world that I absolutely adore, introduced them to Wildlife Wong himself, and we spent time with him at the Bornean Sun Bear Conservation Centre. We also spent time in Danam Valley, which is one of the best pristine jungles in the world, and saw incredible animals like wild orangutans and bitterons and what else? Booming gibbons, all sorts of incredible creatures there. So I've just tweaked those tours and launched them for next year. So if anyone's interested in looking at those tours, seeing what we're doing, and maybe coming along with me, there are only 8 places for each of the 2 tours I'll be running. So go to my website and have a bit of a look on those. I would also be so grateful if you guys could share those with people that you think might be interested in coming along. All right. What have I done this month? I've gone to a book signing at Annie's Bookshop. This is one of my favorite bookshops in the world. I know those people on the Sunshine Coast will agree with me that Annie's Bookshop is just absolutely beautiful. Every book in there is fantastic. And Annie, who owns the shop, is beautiful. This is Palmyra, so this is not Annie. But I think she's got a bit of a crush on my puppet Pongo. So she actually loves it when Pongo comes to visit. So we had a bit of a signing there. That was fun. I also did a really interesting forum on the Friday forums at Noosa Parks on during the school holidays, which Kat and Milani came to, which was really, really fun. So there we learned all about some of these incredible creatures that I've worked with, and then we linked that to biodiversity in our local region of the Sunshine Coast through the minuscule little tiny hero of the fig wasp. And we used that fig wasp to then connect children to the environment through a workshop where they made a quadrat. Now, if anyone here doesn't know what a quadrat is, it's that little square frame you can see on the ground. So what the children did is they built this quadrat, which is basically a grid that scientists use to actually count species in a small area, and then they extrapolate or multiply that what their findings are to a larger area to determine how many of that species there is in the larger area. So the kids built quadrats, and then we actually took them out into the area around the national parks and counted what we could find and drew what we could find, which is really fun. The thing I enjoyed the most, I think, about this experience was that a lot of people who are involved in Noosa Parks are of an older generation who know extreme amounts of knowledge about the environment. So what we did is each of the teams of children had older people sort of paired up with them to mentor them through this process. So once they actually got out into and put their quadrats down under a tree, and they actually had someone with a lot of knowledge with them to help them identify species, to count fungi, to learn all sorts of incredible things. I'd love to ask Kat and Milani, what were your takeaways from this experience?
Well, you've put us on the spot, haven't you?
Why not? Might as well.
The practical exercise was really good, wasn't it? Like to break it down into such a minute little space in the backyard, and the amount of really little things that we found that you don't take the time to notice. If you're walking past, you miss it all. So we were just digging in all those little quadrants and seeing what we could find. And yeah, it's just fascinating. It was a really good, fun exercise, especially to do in a group and chat with each other about what we're finding. And we didn't know what something was, to figure it out together. And yeah, it was good, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks. I put you on the spot, but there you go. You did it. Well done. I don't think we've got anyone else here that was at the event, do we? I don't think we do. No, I think not. So that was fun. And for those of you who don't know, I take these workshops into classes and in schools throughout the country, and also abroad. So I have actually done similar sort of workshops in Malaysia. And at the moment, keep your fingers crossed for me, because it looks like I might be going to Brunei in February to do a whole week of workshops in Brunei in February. I'm so excited for that possibility. All right, next thing I want to sort of announce is something very, very exciting. So I know I've been talking or giving you a little bit of information about my next book, Curious Kai Asks Why. So Curious Kai Asks Why is a story about a 10-year-old girl who asked endless questions. Her questions are so difficult and a little bit off the wall, so her teachers can't answer them, her mum can't answer them, so she and her mum hook up their camper trailer and they go in search of the real life scientists who can answer her questions. So this is a blended fiction non-fiction story, and it gives a profile to some of the experts and scientists that are in our incredible country of Australia. So the first book in the series focuses on traveling around Queensland, and that's where our speaker today comes from. But first, let me tell you a little bit about Curious Kai. All right, so here's a bit of a potential cover concept reveal. This is possibly what the cover might look like. So Curious Kai, the manuscript, has gone out to publishers now to determine whether they would like to publish this in a traditional sense. Those of you that know me know that every book I've done so far has been self-published under my own imprint. So if traditional publishers don't like it, don't worry. Don't worry. Curious Kai will hit the bookshops. It definitely will. It just will go through the normal channels that I've done in the past. All right. So this is an illustration created by Sandra, who's here. Sandra what made you give me a question for you? I'm going to put you on the spot. What was your sort of inspiration for this cover?
Oh, just reading through all the stories gave me an idea of what Kai looks like,
Yeah.
and just her whole personality. A, she's bubbly.
Yep.
B, she's obviously very curious. And I think you gave me a hint of red hair and freckles or something along those lines. So
Yeah, I
she
don't know
just grew from
most
that.
people know that the majority of a lot of protagonists in kids are redhead. I don't know why. You know, even in movies, you might sort of be aware of that this red
Yeah,
thing has got this cheekiness to it, doesn't it?
it does. And she just basically grew from that yeah, just came together.
She's awesome, isn't she? And I love the way that we've got all this story includes 8 different species throughout Queensland, and you'll see them represented in those bubbles, which is kind of cool. And then at the end of every single chapter, Sandra has developed what looks like you can see behind her, actually you can see that there's a picture of an open book. So in this in the narrative, Curious Kai's mum is an illustrator. So Sandra and I tend to think of me as Curious Kai and her as Curious Kai's mum in this sort of story. So here's how one of the pictures look, and this is the one that you can see behind Sandra as well. So this illustration looks like it's Curious Kai's mum's journal that she's actually illustrating as she travels around.
Can I just show the journal? Can you see
Yeah,
it?
please
Hang
do.
on. We're
Oh,
going to
you might have to take your thing off.
yeah, the background off. Yeah, there we are. So
Right.
it's just it's a journal that all handmade. So we've got all the original illustrations all included in the journal as a keepsake at the end, basically. So
Beautiful. And Sandra's kindly said that I can use it when I come into schools and show people the real actual the original artwork as well, which is really cool. So this illustration is about when Curious Kai meets a scientist called Matthew Connors, who is a entomologist who works at JCU University. Now, hopefully Matthew's going to come and share his knowledge about praying mantis and katydids. Katydids are, yeah, if you don't know what it is, look it up. Katydids are a pretty cool animal. So these are some of the creatures that that Curious Kai and Matthew together found by hanging up a sheet in the middle of the rainforest at night with a light on it and seeing what lands on it. So obviously the eagle didn't show up at night, but that's part of the story as well. So isn't that
waiting for
beautiful?
the bugs.
Yeah, she's chasing for bugs. Yeah. Any thoughts or questions to Sandra about her illustrations there? No questions? Got some pretty cool species there, don't we? And Woonbin, you'll notice that we've tried to keep this field note sketch style that you did when you actually did the illustrations for Wildlife Wong and the Sumatran Rhino. We've still kept that sort of a field note sketch idea because it sort of has a foot in two camps, doesn't it, Sandra? It's sort of this idea of illustration, but it's got that scientific sort of element to it. That was
Yes, yeah, yeah.
yeah. Yeah. And I love the way, Sandra, that you did it on the hanging sheet. I love the
That one in particular, yes.
yeah. It was beautiful.
It's a bit
So
hard to indicate the light that they use and everything, but the story does that anyway.
yeah, you did that really well. All right, should we look at another one? Is there anything you want to add to that picture there, Sandra?
No,
No, you're happy?
got
Okay,
enough
let's
there.
look at another one. How about that one? So this one is a chapter where Curious Kai meets Graham and goes in search of cassowaries, the dinosaur birds in the rainforest. Sandra, tell us about the illustrations on this one. Have you got any insights you want to share?
No, there was a fair bit to add to this. Obviously, there's no colour. We've left it just the black. So I do it in pencil sketch and then I go over with a fine texture, fine nib pen. and leave it basically as that. So we're not sure whether it'll end up being coloured or black and white, just like a wash colour, but I think that will depend on the publisher too. But at this point, I think it's more than acceptable just in the black and white.
Yeah, I think it's gorgeous, and every single one of those elements there, it features in the story. This
Actually,
idea.
We know cassowary poo, which is not easy to draw, but I think it works out well.
Graham, did you do okay on the cassowary poo?
Yeah, no, that looks pretty good. It looks like, is it almost sort of steaming up from the floor? That looks cool.
And there's some stories in this chapter, all of which came from the day that I spent with Graham, learning about cassowaries and chicks. And the heading for this chapter is, what is the point of feathers if you can't fly? Which is a very, very interesting question that you're going to have to wait for the book to find out, unless Graham tells us in his little chat here. Any questions, other questions for Sandra about those beautiful illustrations? No, looks like we're doing all right. Thank you, Sandra. You've done. I'm absolutely amazed with the incredible work you've done.
Thank you. Thank
you so much.
It's a job I'm thoroughly enjoying doing.
You're liking doing it. That's good, because I'm now working on the next one. So we're working on Curious Kai traveling through New South Wales, and in this one she'll actually quit school. So she and her mum have decided that school is getting in the way of their experiences. So I know I can see a smile on Milani's flat face here, because Milani is trying to talk Kat into doing exactly the same. So they'll travel around New South Wales, and the second book will be called Curious Kai Quits School. And on the way around New South Wales, she's actually going to meet up with Milani and learn about koalas, because Milani is a bit of a koala crusader and expert. So Milani is going to be one of Curious Kai's best friends in the next book. So really excited to do that. We're going to meet up in January in New South Wales and go koala hunting, aren't we, Kat and Milani?
We can't wait.
No, we can't wait. That should be really fun. All right, so that leads me then to Graham. Graham, thank you so much for being here. Graham runs Tropical Vets in North Queensland with several different vet locations or outlets, whatever you call them. He is someone who looks after all range of animals, from wildlife to domestic animals to farm animals as well, don't you, Graham? So a number of different animals that he's working with. So our questions can cover almost anything you like, I think. One thing that we're going to focus on a little bit is cassowaries, because Graham is pretty much known as the world's leading cassowary expert in North Queensland. So let's see if we could learn a little bit more about dinosaur birds. That sounds like a bet, I think. So thank you, Graham. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm going to pass you over to talk to us all about dinosaur birds.
Yeah, no, thanks, Sarah. I guess for me, I've been a vet for a while now, 29 years or so. But I actually started. So I'm born and bred in North Queensland, so I lived here my whole life. I actually lived on a farm right beside a national park, and we actually used to see them when I was a kid, just sort of wandering. Didn't back, when you're a child, not necessarily everything that's so cool seems so cool when you're living right amongst it. But no, they are a cool bird. And then once I became a vet, I moved back to North Queensland and literally basically sort of got into them by accident, literally because they used to get run over very near to the clinic where I worked. And so we used to have to go and deal with these big guys that were certainly big enough to do some damage. And the interest really came from there, literally wanting to honestly either save them or in some cases just have to humanely euthanize them. And so there was no textbook about cassowaries. There was no ideas on drugs or dose rates or how to treat them and all that sort of stuff. So really over the last 20 or so years, we've developed pretty much all of those protocols around cassowaries. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I imagine. My goodness. And you've had some near misses as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. They are, some people term them the world's most dangerous bird. It's probably that title's probably a little bit overinflated. Yeah, certainly they have the weapons and the ability to hurt you, but they generally will try every other means to get away. But at times with our work, obviously we have to get close to them, and so we have the potential to do stupid things to ourselves. But these days, again, like I was talking before around the drug sort of thing, we're very attuned to their welfare for one thing, and obviously our safety and their safety. So we normally use drugs pretty well, which will basically just tranquilize them, so they're easy to deal with. The little ones are a different story. We don't drug them. We grab hold of them and do what we need to do.
Yeah. So backing up a little bit with cassowaries, how many are there in North Queensland?
Yeah, the honest, true answer is we don't know, because so in the wet tropics in North Queensland, so sort of from Townsville north all the way to the Cape, about 70 to 80% of their habitat is in protected land. So it's either national park or wet tropics or state forest or crown land, where there's no roads, and maybe there's some walking tracks through parts of it, but that's where their habitat mostly is. So we extrapolate. We've done a lot of DNA transecting walks and collecting scats and all this sort of stuff over, probably the last 10 years. The number we guess is probably around 3,000 to 5,000 individual birds. We could be plus or minus 1,000. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not many. And the threats that I remember you telling me about, the threats being obviously roads and people is the major threat, right?
Yes.
In various forms that we come, and dogs as well.
Yeah. So cars, probably number one. Dogs closely followed, and then just, I guess, habitat. Habitat removal. Although Queensland, Australia has some pretty good rules around, obviously, cassowary. Well, any habitat now, anything that is free living, especially rainforest, can't really be taken away anymore, which is great.
That's good. But cars and dogs, I remember being quite surprised when you told me that dogs usually come off second best if they get in a fight with a cassowary.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when you do, if you ever get to see one up close, you'll see that inner claw that they've got, which is sort of 10, 15, up to 20 centimeters long, razor sharp, pointy at the end. That's their weapon. That's what they do their damage with. And so, a dog and a cassowary, one-on-one, a cassowary will win every single time. And part of our work with our veterinary side of things is having to deal with some of those dogs that come in that are injured by cassowaries. So
you see both sides of that equation, don't you?
Yeah. And I mean, in those situations, normally the dog should obviously be, secured or locked up, but these cassowaries will wander into people's backyards, and so it's sometimes a fight that can't be avoided.
Yeah, interesting. Oh, there's your dog just having a say in the background. Oh, that's amazing. Okay, and cassowaries, when they're parents, they get very, very protective of their chicks, don't they?
Yeah, sure. So the dad, the male, is the main carer of the chicks, of the eggs. The female will lay the eggs. They're a bright green color. If you Google it later, you'll be amazed at the color of that egg. It's there's nothing else like it in the bird world. Big green egg. She'll lay somewhere between 3 and 6 eggs. He'll sit on those eggs for somewhere between 50 and 60 days. In that time, he won't eat. He'll literally just go down to his near a water supply, grab a drink, and go back and sit on his eggs. So he'll lose a lot of weight. And then he will then raise them from hatchlings all the way through to somewhere between 9 and 12 months. Sometimes
isn't it?
Yeah, a long time. Sometimes the female will sort of wander back through and say g'day, but rarely does she spend much time hanging around.
And I remember you showed me about the eggs, because I remember asking you about bush turkeys, because I'm sort of equating that parenting sort of process to a bush turkey, where the male also dominates that rearing process. But a bush turkey builds this enormous pile of leaves to attract their mate, and Yeah. So what does a cassowary do?
Well, very boring. In fact, 90% of the time, 99% of the time, if you're walking in the rainforest, you'd walk straight past a cassowary nest, and nest is a very loose word, without even knowing it. It's literally just the tiniest of depressions, and if there's 3 sticks thrown together, he's done better than most. So it really is nothing. He will sit around them and over them, and it's amazing to see such a big bird. You know, a male cassowary might be 50 or 60 kilos, but he can just be so gentle with his foot and the way he moves them around. Like all birds, that their eggs need to be sort of rotated and moved to help in the sort of development of the embryo inside, and he does that all so gently, yet he's such a big bird. And yeah, he also, I think, going back to before, he protects those things. That's the absolute one time you don't want to meet a cassowary is when he's got eggs or when he's got very young birds, because he's not your friend.
No. Do you feel like sharing your story about the injured cassowary?
Oh, sure. So obviously,
put yourself on the spot here.
Yeah, look, I guess, well, yeah, a few interesting stories, but probably the most one that still puts hairs up on the back of my neck. We had a sick bird, a bird with a very, very bad limp, actually, really nasty leg injury. But it had 3 young chicks. And over the course of, it would have been about a month, a chick disappeared, and then another chick disappeared. The fact he was down to just himself and 1 chick. And we presumed that because he wasn't able to get around, he wasn't able to show that young chick where food was. And so the other 2, we presume, actually just perished from lack of nutrition. And so we got to the point where, well, we want to save, well, absolutely the adult more important, but the chick as well, because if we just left them, they were both going to die. Which isn't something we just run around doing. We don't like to intervene with nature all of the time, but this bird was actually in an urban area, so we felt we sort of had to. Anyway, so there was a sort of it was actually like a retaining wall that was at this place, and we were at the bottom of the retaining wall, and the cassowary would come in, and we were actually feeding it. Again, something we don't recommend or condone or ever do, except when we're actually giving this bird antibiotics through food, and so it was coming every day. And so this little young chick was sitting right on the edge of the retaining wall with the big, very, very lame adult bird up on the retaining wall at about head height. And I had 3 rangers with me, and we decided, okay, well, we're going to grab this chick, because if we can grab the chick, we always worry when we sedate an adult that if we sedate the adult, the chick might run away. And so we thought, well, we'll grab the chick, because the big cassowary isn't going anywhere, and so then we'll be able to sedate him. That was the plan. And so we had a box in the back of the ute.
That could go wrong, could it?
Yeah. And I just said to the guys, I said, look, I think this cassowary is so weak, it's not going to do anything. I'll just grab the chicken. I'll run to the car. I'll put it in the back of the ute. We'll all be fine. Which is what I did. I grabbed the chick, and cassowaries, again, if you Google cassowary noises, their vocal range is extreme. From little cheepy sort of what you'd imagine a canary would make, right through to that deep boom, to the point that it actually goes subsonic, so you can feel it but you can't hear it. So that their sound is cool. And I heard all those sounds in the next 10 seconds when I grabbed that bird. The chick screamed its little brains out. As you can imagine, any small bird, any animal, when you take it away from its parent, so it screamed. I turned to go to the car, and in that moment, in the corner of my eye, I saw that cassowary that was hardly able to walk leap off the retaining wall to me, or at me, or toward me. And I ran, and I still call it my sort of Indiana Jones scene, if you remember, when he slides under the door as the door's coming, or the sort of that sliding wall's coming down. Yep. And I actually slid under the four-wheel drive with the cassowary in my hand, in my arm, and sort of jumped into the ute, all in, I don't know, a crazy amount of 3 or 4 seconds. And as I shut the door, the cassowary was looking in the window at me, very, very angry. And then I turned to look to see how the rangers were getting on, because I thought, oh, gee, they must have battled with this cassowary to keep it off me. And they had absolutely all completely disappeared like the biggest chickens in the world. And so from that day on, we changed our schemes and our ways.
Yeah, that was
anyway, all honestly, the good news out of all that is actually it all ended up well. We were able to take the chick into our rehab center. We're actually able to take the adult into the rehab center, deal with the wound, and actually let them go like a few weeks later. So it all ended up well in the end.
It all worked in the long run.
Yeah.
So you can imagine when Graham told me that story, I'm thinking this is narrative gold.
Yeah.
So that that wonderful story has been adapted, and it does feature in Curious Kai Asks Why. So yeah, and what it illustrates to me, Graham, is this idea of when you're a vet, there's so many adventures you have as a vet, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, and I still have them every day. I was actually talking to one of our vets the other week who she's having a bit of a sort of life issues at the moment, and I said, yeah, but don't you can still have fun as a vet. We get to actually enjoy our lives. We get to do all sorts of stuff. I mean, I'd actually hate to be a vet living in the city. I'm sure they have fun too, but yeah, mine is still wide and varied.
Yeah. So have you got any stories from the last few weeks that have been, kind of exciting?
Oh, probably not a cassowary one, but I actually, so in my other world, I do some remote community work. So I work actually up on Cape York in Indigenous communities. And so I was up there last week and we drove up. I normally fly, but sometimes I just like to drive. Honestly, I can't tell the rest of my work bosses that are part of my business, but I just go for the fun. And yeah, we saw there's some crocodile feeding in a little place that no one knows about, but the local farmer throws some food. Bad, don't do it, but it's all safe, very, very safe. They're actually just freshwater crocodiles. And yeah, we actually saw some Aboriginal rock art. There's a little place that's off the beaten track. You got to walk about a kilometre. That it's certainly not a touristy thing, but it's cool to see. And then yeah, work with the guys up there who they're all good fun. The local guys go bringing me these dogs from all over town, and we enjoy.
Usually domestic animals that you're working with in the Indigenous group.
Yeah, up there it is. Although there's a lot of there's a lot of water birds up there. So this is up on the west coast of Cape York. It's a dry season, but it's been quite wet, so there's still water there. So there's a lot of water birds there. So a lot of your brolgas and your jabberoos, those huge, big Australian sort of classical water birds.
Yeah, beautiful. And tell me about the autonomy of birds. When you're looking at large birds, are they similar? Jabberoos and brolgas and cassowaries, they've got a similar?
Yeah, I guess very much no. So obviously those big birds that fly, their anatomy is honestly very, very different to a cassowary. Cassowaries don't actually even have a keel bone, that sort of central bone that your pectoral muscles or your chest muscles attach to help you lift and flap your wings. Cassowaries don't even have that. They have pectoral muscles that are about the size of your little finger. They have wings, and they have all the bones and all the appendages and everything in their wings. It's just the size of a very small chicken wing. I mean, an adult female can get up to 80 to 90 kilos. And I guess we've always, I think wrongly, when you know something about behavior of cassowaries, everyone's thought, it's just like a vestigial little sort of wing that doesn't do anything. But when you actually watch them in the wild and you see that wing actually has a purpose, it has very long quills on it, which can be up to sort of 30 or 40 centimeters long. Some of those, they're actually a follicle feather without any barbules on it. And when you see them walk through the rainforest, that actually helps protect them as they walk through, especially if they're walking past vines and thickets and things that can catch them. It just trickles over those wing feathers, and they continue on their way. We used to try and track these birds through the rainforest by following them, and we never had a chance because they'd just walk into the thickest jungle, and we'd still be there an hour later trying to just untangle ourselves, and they'd long gone. It's so cool at what they do.
Yeah, they're amazing, aren't they? You told me about another story that's actually ended up in Curious Kai as well, about how cassowaries fish.
Oh yeah. I have. Yeah, I wish I could get some good footage. I've done quite a few documentaries with different random people, but it's just one of these things you're never going to get on a movie. I just wish you could. But in the dry season, which we're in now in North Queensland, and I mean, dry season's a bit of a hard word for people who have true dry weather, but it rains less at this time of year for us. A lot of the creeks will start to dry up, and a lot of the water systems will get quite low. And in some points you get in Australia we call them billabongs, where the river dries up, but you still get this stretch of water. And obviously all the water fish and little any little eels and all that sort of thing will get concentrated in those areas, and that's where all the birds will come and obviously get a feed. And cassowaries, and I've seen it once, but I've heard about it from a lot of other people. They will go down into these, especially if it's muddy and it's really sort of getting to that point that the water's really concentrated. They'll go in, they'll sit in it, they'll sort of wallow around in it, and then they'll fluff up all their feathers, and they'll get right down and deep in the water, and then they close all their feathers up, and they'll literally jump out on the dry bank and shake. And when they shake, all the things that they've caught in their feathers fall out, and they turn around and they eat the lot. So whether it's fish or little snails or all those little critters that live in the water, and they turn around and eat them all. They're so wrongly portrayed as a fruit eater. Honestly, I think they eat fruit because they don't have much else to go on in the rainforest. But if they could eat protein all day, they absolutely would.
They would. Oh, that's interesting. That's really good.
Yeah.
But talking about them and fruit, so they're an important part of the rainforest because of that fruit eating as well, aren't they?
Yeah, so we call them, they're called the guardian of the rainforest, or the gardener of the rainforest. And so there's a few species of rainforest tree that have a big seed, like a seed almost, it's as big as your fist. And there's actually nothing else in the rainforest that can eat those things other than a rat or a bandicoot or whatever, have a little chew at it. But cassowaries will swallow those things whole. And we know when we see these species on the side of a hill that there's younger trees growing further up the hill. And so we know that the cassowaries pick those things up, digest partially the outside of the seed, which actually often helps with germination and that sort of stuff, and then deposits them. And they do that all over the place. There's a lot of species of rainforest tree, and I'm not a botanist by any means, but having talked to a lot of them, where the tree, the seedling will grow so much better because it's gone through a cassowary than if it's just dropped on the ground and left there to do its thing.
Awesome. So they actually fertilize it and then leave it in a nice little pile of fertilizer in the middle of the rainforest.
Absolutely. And if you do ever get into North Queensland and go on a bushwalk, you sort of got to tune your eyes into it. But as you walk along, you'll see these little groupings of little seedlings just growing up out of the leaf litter. And obviously the scat's long since gone. It's all sort of been decomposed and gone. But when you actually train your eyes into it, you realize, hey, 3 months ago that was a cassowary scat, and now it's all these little seedlings growing up. And you'll see that in all levels, from a cassowary scat to tiny little things just growing out of it to sort of medium-sized trees, all from the result of the cassowaries. Yeah, they're cool.
Yeah, they are. They're amazing, and such an incredible, important part of the ecosystem, aren't they?
Absolutely. We sort of call them, the gardener of the rainforest. We rely on the cassowary to a point because it has got a little bit of a profile, and we literally know if we're protecting cassowary, we're actually protecting 1,000 other species in that same rainforest. Because if you're looking after the rainforest, if you're looking after the cassowary, it means you're looking after the rainforest. It means by the same token, you're looking after everything else.
You are. And because of that, partly, then they renamed your area the Cassowary Coast, right?
Yeah, they did. The Queensland government changed some sort of council boundaries a while ago, and they came up with the Cassowary Coast, which is quite apt because it is coastal, it is rainforest, and there's lots of cassowaries there. They're not necessarily looked after by the council that well, but we actually it gives us a good sort of leverage to the council sometimes when they're trying to make decisions that maybe aren't helping the environment. We can say, hey, well, you guys are actually called the Cassowary Coast, so you better start looking after them. You've
got to look after the name you've created, your market. Right. Your greenwash marketing has to be backed up.
Correct. Exactly correct.
That's awesome. Now that you just leaves me one more question, then I'll open everyone up to questions. So think of your questions. Well, I'm going for this last one. Is you've just mentioned the coast. So we always think of cassowaries in this sort of environment, but that's not where they are. The one that you actually showed me was in a totally different environment. So talk about that.
Oh, look, cassowaries again, the marketing will tell you they live in the thick rainforest, which they do, and that's they love it there. But they will transverse over all sort of habitats. So on the beach, obviously, where we saw that one that we saw.
Yeah.
And they'll swim. They'll go in the ocean. If they're chased by dogs, they'll escape into the ocean to get away from them. And they'll swim around. Obviously, it's hot in North Queensland in summer, so I'm sure they're just going for a dip sometimes. But then they'll be found in swamp country and sort of tea tree swamp. They'll be found in some sort of a little bit of open eucalypt at time to time if they're moving from sort of one gully rainforest across a patch into another patch. So they do get around, and they'll be found, sometimes in places we wouldn't expect. Up on Cape York, where there's just little pockets of rainforest, and that's not because of any human interaction. It's just that's what the habitat's like. They will transverse from rainforest patch to rainforest patch across sort of open ground sometimes. They don't have a lot of true predators in Australia. So once you're an adult cassowary, it's a little bit like a crocodile in the river. Once you're a big cassowary or a big crocodile, you don't have a lot of. The only things that are going to hurt you is another cassowary, and maybe that's a story for another time. Yeah.
Or maybe it is. Maybe it's a question that's going to come up.
Yeah.
Is there anything you wanted to add that we've sort of forgotten in there?
I guess we were talking about the feathers before. Obviously,
Yeah.
we're living in the wet tropics where it rains, and these places measure their rain in meters, not millimeters. We get 4, 5, 6 meters of rain a year, and you'll get earlier this year we had some pretty big floods here, but you'll get 800, 900 millimeters of rain in a day, and I can't imagine any animal sitting in the rainforest just copping that, but cassowaries do, and they have this unique way that they do that. When they sit, all their weight is on their feet, and on this, they've got this on their chest where I was talking before around where the keel bone was. They actually have this callus, and it's like a callus that you get on your hand or whatever that just sits there from over time from rubbing. And when they're in the mud, or what we'd think is mud because it's pouring rain, they're sitting there basically on 3 points on each leg and on this callus, and they're actually completely dry. They keep themselves above the water line. Wow. And their feathers, while they're not waterproof, they don't have a preen gland like ducks and things where you see water hits a duck's back and flows off. That doesn't happen, but their feathers are so well intertwined that literally when the rain stops, they stand up, they give themselves a shake, and they're dry. And that's cool.
That's super cool. So they're very well adapted to their environment.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and when Graham says it rains in North Queensland, what he means is it's the wettest place in Australia, and there's a bit of competition between two places, aren't there? Innisfail and Tully always are fighting for who's the wettest place in Australia, and that's where the cassowaries are. So yeah,
it's a crazy, sad thing to fight about, but you got to make people come to your town somehow.
It's sort of like the state of origin, isn't it? Really,
it is. Yep.
All right, guys. Well, thank you, Graham, for that amazing insight into cassowaries. I'm sure that we've got some good questions. So, who wants to go first? Who's got the ready? Here we go. Milani, take yourself off mute there. Off you go.
Tell the difference to a male and a female cassowary.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good one. I would say that the average person will not be able to, maybe because they look the same. Their colors are the same. They that bright blue and red with the sort of little wattles, but as you get good at sort of dealing with them and looking at them, there's a couple of ways you can tell. For one, if you've got two big adults together, the female's bigger, and she'll be normally about a third bigger, and the boy's scared of the girl, okay, because she can chase him and hurt him. That's one way. In the breeding time of the year, which is actually now, pretty much between June and September, October, the female will just get brightly colored. Her colors will go really, they stand out, and they've got that sort of color down their neck. But then just as before the color gives way to the feathers, they've got this almost this sort of bubbly appearance of the flesh there, and that gets shiny. And the females always just look that little bit more intimidating, I would call it. Another way, which is a little bit subjective, and again, we get good at it because we see them all the time. As I was saying before, the male raises the chicks, and the male will sit on those eggs, and he'll pull those chicks in under him just like you see, like a chicken would do. And so when they're standing, if you have a female and a female standing, the male at the back, behind his back legs, behind his sort of back of his back, his feathers just protrude down a little bit more. And that's because he uses those are the feathers that he actually gathers his little chicks around with. And so the female, her rump sort of ends in a sort of an end point, whereas his curves down a little bit more. And really, honestly, that's the only way. And they're both a bit hard to tell. As vets, we find other ways, generally with a sedated bird and a glove and a finger up their bum. So, yeah.
That'll do too. But don't try that one at home, Milani.
No.
Awesome. Good question, Milani. Roger, you've got your hand up. What would you like to know?
Yeah, I was reading about cassowaries before I came to this session because I knew that was going to be one of the topics. And I came across a reference. It said that cassowaries only lay fertile eggs. Now, I don't think I've ever seen any reference to that for any other kind of bird, one way or the other, really.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering, is it unique to cassowaries, or is it common in other birds?
I would say that's not true. Certainly, they will lay eggs that don't hatch, that don't ever develop an embryo in. So, I think science is an amazing thing, but sometimes people write stuff and other people just sort of go along with it. But I can dispute and prove that that's not true straight away. Certainly, yeah, they'll sit on eggs and 2 or 3 hatch, others won't. And we actually had a bird in once that got hit by a car, and we actually got it into the rehab center and it actually laid an egg overnight. And we incubated that egg right through, and yeah, it was never fertile at any point in time. So no, not true.
Okay, thank you very much.
No
Good
worries.
question there, Roger. And then we've done a Mythbusters now. That's awesome. Who else has got one?
Are cassowaries are they territorial or do they share territory?
Yeah, sure. So we part of, I mean, I've done a lot of projects. We haven't got time to talk about them all, but one of them was we did quite a large GPS tracking project with adult birds. Actually, at the place where I took Sarah to see that bird, we sedated and put on a GPS tracker onto 6 adult birds. It's actually 4 males and 2 females, and we followed them for 3 months. And amazingly, yeah, once we got all the data back and could sort of really analyze it really well and get it onto a map and check it out, they have their own territory. So the males will all interact, overlap with males, and the males will all overlap with the females. That way, obviously, the whole breeding thing can happen. But they have patches that is just their own. Yet, even so, in that particular study, there was a bunch of fig trees a few kilometers away. So away from any of their habitats. And yet in that period of time, every single one of those birds left their habitat to go to that food source and back again. But they all did it at a different time, which tells me that they can communicate very well with each other. And I briefly said that they will fight. They will also generally avoid a fight. So if they're in a patch of rainforest, they will communicate and they will avoid each other. So if one knows that a cassowary is at a food source, if it's a smaller, weaker cassowary, it will avoid that cassowary until it goes, and then it'll go in and pick up the scraps. But yeah, no, they do definitely have habitat or have their own territory. Around about 5 to 10 square kilometers is what their normal cassowary will sort of traverse. Sometimes more, sometimes less.
Great question. Well done. Christine, you've got one.
Yes, thank you, Graham. So interesting. So 2 questions. What's that thing on their head, and are they related to emus?
Okay. And I'll answer the second one first. Yeah, they are definitely related to emus. They're in the ratite family of birds, and so in the ratites you have ostriches, you have emus, you have cassowaries. You also have kiwis, the little New Zealand bird. And then there's a bird called a rhea, which is in South America. And there's actually a few species of them. It's RHEA, rhea, if you want to Google that. They look like a pretty ugly emu, but yeah, that's them. So that's them. Cassowaries have a few interesting similarities to emus. Their feathers, they have one follicle that comes out of the skin, but it actually splits into 2 little barbules. And emus and cassowaries have that likeness. As far as that thing on its head, it's called a casque, CASQUE. We call it a helmet, but casque is its better name because it's not a helmet. It actually doesn't serve any particular protective function. there's a bit of debate, and has always been debate, about what it actually does. If you cut one open on a dead bird, it's not quite hollow, but it's not horn. It's got an outer structure of keratin, which is like our fingernails and that sort of stuff. But the inner part is actually quite hollow. It's got little, what we call trabecular bone, little tiny fragments of bone. But when you look at it, it actually looks a little bit like bubble wrap. It's actually little sort of tiny little bubbles in there. And so the theories have gone around that it might be a resonance chamber for sound, because they do these deep sounds that'll travel for kilometers and kilometers in the rainforest. And there's another theory going around that maybe it's a thermoregulation type thing. It's actually keratin, so that temperature doesn't travel very well through keratin. And I think we've pretty much come to the conclusion that it's literally just I've got a big cask, therefore I'm really good looking, or I've got a big cask, therefore I'm good at fighting, you should stay away from me. So literally a bit of a status symbol in the cassowary world is actually what we think it's for.
And they don't then use that when they're fighting, like deer might use their antlers?
Absolutely not, no. It's one of those hands-on things. It's just pretty hard to do, but if you ever get the opportunity, which is hard, it's good for me because I see them all the time. You can grab hold of that thing, and it's actually not, it's actually spongy. You can actually move it with your fingers. And an issue that they get sometimes, they get caught in pig traps or in people's backyards and things, in fences, and they'll actually do damage to that cask when they're trying to get their head through stuff. So it's not, it's a bit firm, but it's not protective in any way.
Thank you.
No worries.
And it's not super heavy either, which is good, isn't it? Because you're carrying this thing around on their head that must just be, quite super strong.
Yeah, quite soft, and it's there's like I say, there's that sort of bubble wrap appearance in there, so it's actually almost hollow on the inside.
Yeah. Awesome. Any more questions? How are we going? Looks like we might have completely wiped up the questions there, Graham. Well done.
Oh, that's cool.
Fantastic job there, Graham. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge there. And I want to tell everyone this is even more thank you, because there's a huge thank you, because it's actually Graham's birthday. So, yeah. So he got up early on his birthday for this. Give a round of applause for that, Graham.
Thank you. Good on you. Ta.
It's been a delight working with you for Curious Chaos Why, and the concept behind it is to showcase people like you and the work you're doing, but also to take some of the science that you know and to use narrative to reach more people with some of that knowledge. So hopefully I'll do that justice, and Curious Kai will get out into the world at some point. Sandra and I have done our bit, and now we're working on the next step. So please send out all your good thoughts to publishers, and if you know any, we don't worry if you can give them backhand us. We don't care, do we? Sounds good. But thank you once again, Graham. Please give Graham a big round of applause.
Thanks very much. Good on you. Thanks very much.
Does anyone else have something to share about what they've actually been doing this month? Oh, now I know, Milani, you've been doing all sorts of things. Come on, Milani, don't be shy.
Well, when was it?
Last week of school holidays?
The last week of school holidays, I ran a koala detective workshop, and that was really good. So we took so I did the talk to explain how to find koalas and notice the signs of sickness. And then we went out into the field and we put little clip-on koalas on the tree. We put red eyes and dirty bottoms on some of them, so they had a little clipboard, but they had to fill out the signs of sickness and if they heard bellowing, because we had a speaker, and then we put bellowing on them.
That was pretty cool when you told me that. So you actually had a speaker with a koala bellowing, and they had to try and identify that call. And did you put any scats anywhere?
What?
Did you put any
scats? Oh yeah, we put some scats on the ground too, but they had to find and tick off.
And there's some scratches on the trees. Some of them.
Put some scratches on the trees, so people had to identify all these different things. How did it go?
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, we got some really good feedback. So a lot of kids said it was the best thing for the day. It was like an Eco Kids Day where they had done, excuse me, like craft and
Yoga and meditation, and the detection dogs came out as well, and gave a little talk. So yeah, the feedback was really, really good. It was school age children, so the oldest was about 12 and a half.
Yeah, really good. And as you said, the koala detection dogs came out and joined you as well. So that's Ramon, who actually spoke to our group last year, I think. She brought her dogs out. So that's pretty awesome. Yeah, so well done. Well done for that. You put effort into that. So good job. Anyone else been up to anything exciting? Oh, what have we got? We've got a hand up. What have you been doing? You have to take yourself off mute. Claire, can you do that? Awesome. Tell us what you've been doing, darling.
Who you are first.
My name's Zachary, and this is what we're raising a willy wagtail chick.
Are you? Does it have a name?
No.
Oh, we'll have to help you with that, I think.
Good idea.
So how did you find this willy wagtail? Where did it?
A person gave it to us.
Yeah. And how do you raise it?
So we worked for an hour, and like we know the person who gave us the chick, so it was pretty easy to know where they are and stuff.
Okay. And how do you take care of it?
Basically just feed it and keep it warm and
clean up the poop pits.
Clean the fencing.
Yeah.
It's
nice to have you.
It's like probably about that.
The nest or the bird?
The chick's like about that long, including the head.
Oh, no way. That's awesome.
It hasn't even got any feathers yet.
Doesn't it?
It
so
doesn't.
What do you do when it gets feathers? What's your next step?
Probably ask some other carers if it is ready to be released.
To fly, won't we, in our aviary?
And teaching it.
And then you'll let it go?
And release it.
Well done. Oh, that's awesome. Great job. Fantastic work. You guys are brilliant. All right. Well, I'm gonna. We've gone past our 9 o'clock sort of deadline here. It's been such a delight having you guys here, especially having the younger generation here to share all your knowledge and all the experiences that you're having. So I'm hoping you guys are going to come back next month as well, because I want to tell you who we're going to meet next month. We're actually going to be talking to this fella here. Now, I know some of you know this man here. So Kurt Jones is someone I've known for a few years, and he, because he used to catch snakes, he's pretty cool at catching snakes. And that's something kind of important in Australia. But Kurt is a young man who has created some major waves in our region and throughout Australia, because he's created a brand new charity, environmental charity called Let's Coexist. And over the last few months, Kurt is making some huge inroads into getting young people in the millennial sort of generation into conservation. He's actually now got, I don't know how many it is, Kat, you probably know, I think it's like 5 or 6 different chapters of Coexist throughout Australia, and each of them are getting the millennial sort of age group into conservation, into planting trees, into habitat protection, and all sorts of incredible things. So he's going to come and talk to us about his process, how he's done that, how he's actually getting young people on board. Now, we're not talking about the young people who are here. We're talking about the next generation up. That's who he's focusing on, trying to get involved, which is so important, because I don't know if those of you who go to a number of different sort of conservation events, you find that the general age in these things is usually quite high, so we need to get these next generations involved if we're going to save this planet. So Kurt's going to help us understand how we can do that and how he's doing it. So don't miss that one. Every single month we meet on the 10th of the month. The time will change, and it always changes so that everyone around the world can come at various times. Irene and Wunbin don't have to get up in the middle of the night all the time. That's a good thing. So I'll email you some details about when it's going to be next, as soon as I've confirmed the time frame with Kurt. All right. So Graham, I hope you'll come and hear what Kurt's doing too, because it'd be kind of useful for some of your conservation efforts as well.
Yeah, thank you. Good on you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks once again, Graham, for being our guest speaker today. Really, really super important. And thank you very much.
No problem. Thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, and thank you everybody for being here.